Hi guys, this is Arvind here from MindMajix, and today I welcome you all to this amazing session on how to crack Snowflake interview in first attempt. Okay, so we have been receiving a lot of queries around this topic, so we decided to come up with a video that will address all the questions that we have been receiving. Okay, so the main motive of this session is, we will provide you with some tips and tricks which you can use in your actual interview that help you clear the interview in the first attempt itself. So without any further delay, let's get started with our topic. So before moving ahead, I want you guys to subscribe to MindMajix YouTube channel and also hit the bell icon so that you never miss an update from us. So without any further delay, let's get started. The first and foremost topic that you guys must master before attempting for the interview is the SQL and NoSQL database management systems. So when you go for a Snowflake interview, okay, so whether you're an experienced professional or you're a fresher, you'll be asked to write basic SQL queries in the interview. Okay, so you must be aware of the various SQL commands and the basic queries which can be written using SQL statements. So you should be aware of the SQL syntax and the whatever the components are of basic relational database management systems. Then you should be aware of primary key, foreign key, and all such concepts. So SQL is one such thing that you must know inside out to clear the Snowflake interview. Okay, so apart from this, there are various other concepts as well, such as SQL functions. Then you have order by, group by, insert statement, update statement, and many more such SQL concepts. Okay, so for practicing SQL, you can refer to any online tutorial. And we also have blogs related to SQL and SQL interview questions from MindMajix as well. Okay, so you can refer to those as well. And we have good quality questions that will help you clear the SQL related part in the interview. And the next component here is the NoSQL database. Okay, so there's a difference between SQL and NoSQL database management systems. For example, the various SQL-based databases are, like MySQL is there. You have Postgres, you have Oracle, you have SQL from Microsoft. Okay, so these are the various types of SQL-based databases. And if you talk about the NoSQL database management systems, so here you have MongoDB, you have Cassandra, you have HBase. Okay, so these are the various types of NoSQL database management systems. Okay, so I would recommend you to pick any one. Ideally, like my personal suggestion would be you should pick MongoDB. I find it very interesting and it is pretty much simple to get started with. So you should be aware of how NoSQL database management systems work. Okay, so here what you can do is you can do a comparative study. So you can pick a concept from SQL and you should see how that concept works in NoSQL database management systems. So this is a very good method to get started with NoSQL database management systems as well. Okay, so ideally what you should do, like if you pick MongoDB, for example, so you should go on Google and search for MongoDB documentation. Okay, so if you search for MongoDB documentation, then you will find one link there, and on that link, you can refer to the various concepts that are explained related to NoSQL database or, like MongoDB. Okay, so in this way, you can clear the first hurdle, which is very important for any Snowflake interview, which is SQL and NoSQL based database management systems. Okay, so let's just move on to the next slide, which is nothing but Python. Okay, so as you all know, Python is a high level general purpose programming language. So ideally, you should know basic Python programming. You should know some data structures in Python, and you should also know some algorithms that can be used with Python as well. So basically here the Python can, as a Snowflake application developer, so Python can be used for ETL operations. Okay, so you can write scripts in Python that are useful for performing the ETL operations. So as you all know, ETL is nothing but extract, transform, and load. So extracting the data, transforming the data, and the loading of data. So for that purpose, you write scripts using Python programming language. Okay, so for that, ideally, you should know basic Python, as I told you earlier, but it would be very good if you know some intermediate programming concepts as well that are related to Python. So I would suggest you to, try and implement some basic data structures and algorithm using Python. Okay, so as you guys know what data structures is and what algorithms is. Okay, so some sorting algorithms, some searching algorithms. So try and implement that algorithms using Python. So this was the overall Python that you need to clear the Snowflake interview. Okay. So, but for example, if you're an experienced candidate, let's say if you have an experience of around 2 to 3 years, and if you're willing to crack this interview in Snowflake, so I think you should have some advanced knowledge of Pythons as well. Some advanced concepts in Python, such as decorators, file management, and so on. So this is the level of Python that you should know. So from my point of view, what I would suggest you do is go to any online coding platform. Okay, there you can, practice Python concepts. You can brush up your skills related to Python. Okay. I won't take any name of any coding platform, but there are a few coding platforms where you have, where you can practice your Python skills based on your skill level. For example, if you're a beginner, then they will have a certain set of problems that in Python that you can practice. Once you clear that, then you can move to the intermediate level. And once you clear that as well, then you can move to the advanced level. Okay. So in this way, you can practice your Python concepts on those coding platforms as well. Okay, so this would be my personal suggestion to you to practice Python. Okay, and it would be very good if you have some Python projects as well. These are the projects that you can display on your resume as well. Okay, so it creates a good impression on the recruiters or the interviewee. So it increases your chances of clearing the interview. Okay, so this was the second point. So the third point here is Linux. Okay, so basically the idea behind learning Linux is that you have to write shell scripts using Linux. Okay, so there are various concepts related to Linux, such as, you should understand file management in Linux. You should understand what directories are. How do you change the file permissions? How do you deal with the environment variables using Linux? And there are various communications and processes in Linux. And if you talk about shell scripting, so you should know how do you use variables, special variables, arrays, basic operators, decision making, and so on. So these are the various concepts that you should be aware if you are learning Linux. Okay. So as far as I know, you will be asked basic level of Linux questions in the interview. And if you are able to clear that, you are doing very well in the interview. Okay. So this was the whole idea behind learning Linux. Okay. So let's just move on to the next point, which is a BI tool. So here you can choose any tool, either Tableau or Power BI. So basically, you should be able to, visualize data using any of the BI tools, that is Tableau or Power BI. Okay. The basic idea behind learning Tableau or Power BI is that, you get to know how do you transform the data. So for example, if you talk about Power BI, so for Power BI, right from connecting to the data source to creating visuals, okay, to creating dashboards and visuals. If you do any one project in Power BI, let it be a simple one. So if you do that successfully, you'll be able to understand how data flows. You'll be able to understand how to deal with data. Okay. So that is a very crucial skill when it comes to any Snowflake interview. Okay. So this is the ideal thing that you should learn to clear the Snowflake interview. Okay. So if you talk about the Tableau, so Tableau comes with a 14-day free trial version. So you can, if you're keen to learn Tableau, so you can download the 14-day version, free trial version, and you can, start reading the documentation of Tableau, and you can do one or two basic projects related to Tableau. Okay. So if you talk about Power BI, so there's no such thing of 14-day free trial. So Power BI desktop version is free to download. You can download it and start using it right away. Okay. And in Power BI as well, you can do 2, 3 projects related to, like you can pick any sales data or, weather data or any such data set, and you can perform any such, you can extract like ETL operations also you can perform on data using Power BI. Okay. So this will give you a clear understanding of how Tableau or Power BI works. Okay. So this will be very helpful for you to clear the Snowflake interview. Okay. So this point is an added advantage as a Snowflake application developer. Okay. So having a basic understanding of Tableau or Power BI is very important. Okay. So let's just move on to the next point. So the next point is having an understanding of the cloud platforms. Like you can pick either one, like AWS or Azure or Google Cloud Platform. Okay. So since Snowflake is a cloud-based data warehouse platform, so having a good understanding of how cloud works, so how you can store data on cloud and how you can deal with data, how you can perform multiple operations on data, how the data gets stored in the cloud. So these are the concepts that you must be aware as a Snowflake application developer or a Snowflake professional. Okay. So for that, you must be aware of any one of the cloud platform. Okay. So you can pick anyone as per your convenience. So let's say, for example, if you pick AWS, so what you can do is you can go to the official documentation of AWS. Okay, so you can prepare a free tier account on AWS platform, and you can start doing some basic operations. Like there's a documentation provided there, and if you follow the steps or the entire procedure that is mentioned in that document, you'll be clearly able to understand how do you work with AWS as far as data is concerned. Okay, so this is a very good point you should consider to clear the Snowflake interview. Okay, so if you are able to deal with cloud platforms, okay, so there are high chances of you clearing the Snowflake interview in the first attempt itself. Okay, so there are various certifications as well related to these cloud platforms. Okay, but I won't suggest you to, as of now, I won't suggest you to go for any certification. If you have it, it's a very good benefit or an added advantage. But there's no such hard thing that you should have a certification only, and apart from that, nothing will work. There's no such thing. Okay, so if you have time, you can go for AWS certifications or GCP or Azure certifications. Okay, only if you have time. Okay, but if you don't have time, if you know the concepts of any one of the platform, you are good to go. Okay, so that's all related to the cloud platforms. Okay, so let's just move on to the next point, which is the data warehousing concepts. So since Snowflake is a cloud-based data warehouse platform, so you must be aware of the all the data warehousing concepts. Okay, so if you are a fresher, you should know all the concepts, and if you are an experienced professional, so you must be able to mention the projects that you have worked, like the data warehousing projects that you have worked in the previous companies or your based on your previous experience. Okay, so there are various data warehousing concepts and terminologies that you must be aware of. Apart from that, there are delivery processes and system processes. Okay, so there is data warehouse architecture as well. You should understand what is OLAP, what is OLTP, the difference between the two, difference between OLAP and OLTP. So there's relational OLAP and there is multi-dimensional OLAP as well. And there are various schemas related to data warehouse, okay, that you must be aware of. So such as Snowflake schema, star schema, facts constellation schema. Okay, so these are the various concepts that you must be aware of. Okay, apart from that, you must be aware of the partitioning strategies and the metadata concepts and the data marting as well. So these are the concepts that you will be expected to know during the interview. Okay, so this is a very crucial point that you must be aware of. Okay, so if you are successfully able to answer any question related to this concept, data warehousing concept, you will be able to clear the interview in the first attempt itself. Okay, so guys, I do not want you to compromise on learning or skipping any one of the topics from these data warehousing concepts. You should know each and everything. So cover each and every concept, read it multiple times. And if you do that, you will be able to clear the interview. So this was all about the data warehousing concepts. So the next point here is having hands-on experience with Snowflake. So since the interview is based on Snowflake, you should have some, at least for freshers, you should have basic hands-on experience with Snowflake. Okay. And if you're an experienced professional, you should have quite good hands-on experience with Snowflake. Okay. So as far as basic experience is concerned, you should be able to connect to Snowflake. You should be able to load data into Snowflake, unloading of data from the Snowflake and using Snowflake interface and sharing data securely among different users in Snowflake. So these are the basic operations that you must be aware of, and you should have hands-on experience in Snowflake. Okay. And also you should be able to write basic queries, like as I discussed earlier in the first point, you should be able to write SQL queries in Snowflake to, carry out the ETL operations on data. Okay. So that is the whole idea behind the Snowflake, right? So these are the points that you must be aware of if you want to clear the Snowflake interview in the first attempt. Okay. Apart from that, what I would suggest you go to the official documentation on Snowflake, and if you try to read the official documentation, they have also provided some sample, like sample projects or sample steps, which will be able to clearly explain the concepts that are related to Snowflake in a very easy to understand language. Okay. So if you follow that guidelines or if you follow that documentation sincerely, you will be able to understand each and every concept that is related to Snowflake. Okay, so I would recommend you guys to please go and read the documentation. Okay, and try to gain hands-on experience from that documentation. So that will be really helpful for you guys to clear the interview. And this is again one more point I want you guys to not compromise at all. So clearly have a good understanding of the various concepts that are explained in the Snowflake documentation and try to explain them by giving relevant examples in the interview. By giving relevant examples, you are able to connect well with the interviewer and it creates a good impression of you on the interviewer. So this was another important point, and let's move on to the next point. The next point here is Apache Airflow. So for freshers, this is not mandatory, but if you're an experienced person, let's say, for example, if you have experience of around 3 years, I want you guys to read more about Apache Airflow. So what Apache Airflow is? So Apache Airflow is an open source workflow management platform for data engineering pipelines. Okay, so Airflow is written in Python and workflows are created using Python scripts. So Airflow is designed under the principle of configuration as code. Okay, so while other configuration as a code workflow platforms exist using markup languages such as XML, so using Python for Airflow allows developers to import libraries and classes to help them create their own workflows. As I told you earlier, like if you have certain experience, previous experience using Snowflake, if you know Apache Airflow along with Snowflake skills, so it will be very good added advantage, and it will create a very good impression of yours on the interviewer. Okay, so knowing Apache Airflow and using it depends on the project as well that you will be working on. Like if you get hired by a company as a Snowflake professional, so it depends on the project whether to use Apache Airflow or not, like the project requirements. But I would like, if you guys have time, I want you guys to know more about Apache Airflow. For Apache Airflow as well, there is the official documentation. Like if you go on Google and search Apache Airflow of your official documentation, so you can find the documentation, and if you read that once thoroughly, and you try to understand those concepts, so it will be a very good benefit for you in the interview. Okay, so as I have told you earlier, this is preferred but not mandatory. Okay, so if you do not have time, please do not go for Apache Airflow. Let's move on to the next point. So the next point is the analytical and problem solving skills. The previous points that we discussed were, purely technical. So this is something which is related to, apart from technical knowledge, you should have analytical skills as well, and you should have problem solving skills as well. So these are the very important skills that you must have in order to clear the Snowflake interview in first attempt. So analytical skills means that you should be able to think in terms of numbers. Okay, you should be able to analyze the problem. And basic problem solving skill is that you are given a problem. Like if you start working in a company, you will be given a problem statement. So how do you go about solving that problem? That really matters. So learning a programming language, syntax tool on that can be done. Okay, you can be trained on that. But problem solving skill is once a skill that you need to develop on your own. Problem solving skills can't be taught. You have to develop it on your own. Okay, and how do you develop it? So the only thing to develop problem solving skills is by practicing. That's it. Practice is the only solution to develop this skill. There's no other alternative. So how do you go about a problem? How do you solve a particular problem? What approach do you take? How much time does it take to solve a particular problem? So these are the small things that really matter. If you're given a problem statement and if you find that it is very difficult to solve this problem, so what you can do is, if you can break that problem into multiple smaller problems. Okay, so you can try solving those smaller problems. When you solve those smaller problems, like if you get the solution of those smaller problems, and then what you can do is you can combine that solution, like the solutions of the smaller problems, and that as a whole will be a solution to the bigger problem statement. So this is how you develop problem solving skills. Like this is one of the approach to solve a problem. So this is something that you must be having in order to clear any interview. So not just Snowflake, even if you go for any other profile or any other interview. So analytical skills and problem solving skills are mandatory for IT guys. So that's what I believe. So this was another important point that I wanted to highlight in this session. And the last point that I'm going to talk about is the soft skills. Okay, so the soft skills here consist of, the communication skills, both verbal and written. Then next comes attitude, and third comes the body language. Okay, so the first point here is the communication skills. Okay, you should be good in communication. So this is the, primary requirement of any company. Okay, not just IT, any company, be it automobile industry, manufacturing, banking, any other job. If you consider, communication skills are mandatory. So not just verbal, you should have written communication skills as well. So normally these skills are tested in the first round of interview only, like the basic first round where you have quantitative aptitude and verbal skills, the questions related to verbal skills and written skills, English communication. So these are the skills tested in the first round itself. Okay, so only if you clear the first round, then you'll be able to attend the next rounds, like the technical rounds, which we discussed earlier, Python, Linux, SQL, NoSQL, and so on. So the first hurdle is the communication skills and the first basic round. The next point is the attitude. So this is something I want you guys to understand. So if you're going to a company or if you're going to the venue where you will be having this Snowflake interview, so what attitude that you need to carry? So you must always be, very humble. Like you should show that you're really humble and you're very interesting and you're very, you're very passionate about the job that you're applying for. So that should be visible from your attitude. You shouldn't be like this that, if I don't clear this interview, I'll clear some other interview, I'll apply for some other company. No, you shouldn't have this attitude. Okay. So I've seen many guys having this problem. Okay, attitude problem. So whenever you're going for a interview or to, like when you reach the venue for the interview, you should always be showing that, that expressions on that face that you're very much keen to know about the company. You're very much keen to clear this interview and joining, like if you clear the interview on joining this company, like you should show excitement. Okay, not over excitement, but certain level of excitement should be there. If you have that attitude, the interviewer is able to see that as well. Okay, so how keen you are, how excited you are, and what relevant questions do you ask to the interview as well. Like at the end of the interview, the interviewer asks you, like, do you have any questions for us? So you should ask relevant questions at that time. Okay, so that shows that you're very keen on joining this company or you're very keen about this role. You're passionate about this role. Okay, so that is a very important point that I wanted to highlight here. And the third is the body language. So guys, this is just an interview. You should have, a very positive body language. You shouldn't be, like I'm very stressed or I'm very scared about this interview. It's just an interview. Even if you don't clear this interview, there's no harm. There are many other opportunities that you will get. Okay. But your body language should be such that, like you're here to clear this interview. You're here to dominate. And believe me, guys, your body language matters a lot. The interviewer is successfully able to comprehend your body language. They come to know within 2 to 3 minutes only what your body language is and what your attitude is. Okay. So if you're having good attitude and good body language, it certainly creates a very good impression on the minds of recruiters. Okay. And the recruiters also want to hire good guys or good candidates. Okay. So these are the points that I wanted to cover in these soft skills. So with this, we have come to the end of this session on how to clear the Snowflake interview in first attempt. I hope you guys have enjoyed this session. If you have any queries related to this session, then you can write them in the comments box below and my team is here to help you with all your doubts and queries. And I wish you all the best. So thank you so much for being with us.